Funny enough, I got the I got the idea for the illustration around 2 a.m. But one thing I would always like people to keep in mind is, or to always note, is to have an open mind. Like, don't restrict your mind, your thinking. Regardless of everyone, face value, everyone thinks stupid things sometimes, stupid, weird things. But me, I don't trash the weird things I'm thinking about. Always write down your ideas. Like, regardless of how stupid, they are crazy stupid, they are good stupid, they are bad stupid. But then, regardless of how this might sound, always write them down because. Hello everyone, my name is Jolayemi, also known as Sash, and I am on the Designstration podcast with Ubon. Design plus illustration equals Designstration.
Hello everyone, you're welcome back to the Designstration podcast. My name is Ubon, and I'm your host for this podcast. And today with me, I have an excellent illustrator. If you've actually seen some of his works, you would know he's someone who really needs not that much introduction. When we talk about monumental and official datings and unexpected happenings that shows up, specifically the country, talking about things like Hilda Bassi, winning the Cookathon. Sorry, not winning, but doing the Cookathon October 1st, Independence Day, Valentine's Day. This particular guest always has an illustration to capture that moment. He's exceptional, he's phenomenal, and it's no other person than the incredible Sash. Sash, you're welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you folks for having me. It's great to finally be on this because I think we've been
we've been planning
supposed to do this for a while now.
Yeah. You're welcome. How's your day going? How's the day going for you?
Well, my day has been good, except for the fact that I think the Harmattan is now gone and everywhere is just so humid right now.
Wait, what state are you in? Are we in Lagos?
No, I'm not in Lagos.
Okay. Because in Lagos, Nigeria, there's no Harmattan here. I can't feel anything.
Yeah,
maybe it's my own region. But
no, that's the thing about Lagos. Lagos is usually just so different and everything.
That's cool. That's great. Is your name really Sash? Is that your real name?
No, my real name isn't Sash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How did you come about the name Sash?
The short story is it was a nickname given to me while I was in secondary school. Back in my secondary school days by my friends. It was more or less a sort of cool, I would say coincidental nickname. It was more or less a taunt me started. But back then, I remember I was like in the technology class because back then in my secondary school, we had different sections, I think the commerce, sciences, and then we had a special technology class for students who were like trying to advance into engineering and stuff. So I remember particularly there's a particular course we take then, which is building construction. And there was a topic we were treating around the period when I was given the name. It was on Windows. And there are like a specific segment of specific types of windows, which are called like the Sash windows. So the design of such windows are called Sash windows. So that is just like the first part of the origination of the nickname. The second part is a really, really much longer story, which I don't like to dive into right now. But yeah, that's more or less like the foundation of the name.
I actually like the name Sash. Sash.
Yeah,
By the way, Sash always goes undercover. Like, I remember last year when we went for UDC, when we went for UDC, I saw him, but I just didn't know he was the one. Like, because I mean, we don't have his profile picture anywhere. It was, I think, yeah, it was Ozonwa, right? I hope
Yeah, yeah.
I'm probably murdering that name, but he was the one that called me and said, "Hey, Ufot, do you know who's this?" And I was like, no. So this is Sash. I just opened my mouth. He goes on the cover. Sash, what's your background story like? Were you the president of arts in your primary school? I was president of arts in my
Oh,
primary school. What's your background story like? How did you come into digital illustrations and all?
though my background into arts generally didn't have any proper, I would say proper, there was no proper structure to it. I was in no art class. I was taking no art courses or lectures or lessons rather. So just more or less a boy who had a pencil, a sketch pad. I was just trying to draw the world it sees, basically. So it was more or less just a way of expressing. Well, I never knew what I was doing back then, but I just knew I was being. I loved the way people. Well, I had seen growing up. I had seen people, artists as such, like express themselves like through
Yeah.
art, and I had no particular one who I was looking up to. I just knew that people could imitate or yeah, imitate basically what they see on paper, basically. So I
Mm-hmm.
just knew that, oh, that's something really cool. That trying to, and the goal I had back then was like trying to get exact representation of what I see. Like, for example, portraits. So I always try to pick up portraits. I remember back then I would always draw up all these presidential portraits, governorship portraits,
Wow.
or notable people in the Nigeria society basically back then. So I would always try to recreate that, but with pencil on a paper. So that was just the way it was for me then. So it was more or less just a way of expressing or trying to
So,
see how far I could go at imitating real life, but on paper.
wow, that's interesting. Did you also have like family members who sort of influenced and supported your that that particular phase where you just expressed yourself?
Well, not so full on basically, being that no, well, the typical Nigerian African.
Nigerian, yeah.
It was more or less school first before any other thing.
Any other, yeah.
Really. But then I remember there was a period when I was to get A3, an A3 sketchbook, and I told one of my parents to get that for me, and they did get that for me, and they were always really impressed by the the drawings I always come up with.
Hmm.
So I think that just gave me a little boost in the manner it was presented in, basically. So that just really encouraged me to know that, oh, I was doing something really well, and people were impressed because I think a lot of people around me, I had no artists around me basically. So, but then me being the only artist in like my family, and people were really impressed with what I did, really just gave me that motivation to like keep doing what I did.
Very, very interesting. I mean, for me, growing up, yeah, just like the typical Nigerian family, it's just that art was not really that thing per se. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I had this aunt one time you know, who wanted to actually tear one of my drawings because I was drawing. I think yeah, it was Samson tearing the lion's mouth from the My Book of Bible Story, and I colored his hair with a blue pen, and she was angry because in the original book, Samson's hair was
Okay.
colored with a black pen. So she was like, why did I use a blue pen instead of just using black? Like I had spoiled it. And I
Oh.
just didn't get because it's my drawing. I was just drawing for fun, but I never really had that people stop me from doing, drawing what I would draw. But then I just remember this very incident because I remember someone threatening to tear my artwork
Yeah.
because I used something very different. That's
But
interesting.
we're thankful that didn't stop you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad it didn't stop me. Do you watch cartoons? There's
Yeah, I
this
do.
stereotype that every artist, not just cartoon now, anime specifically. Do you watch anime?
Yeah, I do watch anime.
Okay, sorry, it's pronounced anime. Oh my goodness, June would probably laugh at me when she hears this.
It,
Let me ask a question.
okay.
Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Yeah.
is that considered anime or not?
No, it isn't considered an anime
Anime.
because it isn't produced, or it wasn't produced by a native Japanese
Oh, I
studio.
see.
So yeah, anything that comes out of a Japanese studio, basically
Oh,
speaking,
I
and
see.
it is titled with Japanese speaking, basically is what is called an anime.
Oh, I see. But that means I haven't watched anime because that's what I would call the closest thing to what anime. I mean, I don't watch it, and honestly, for no very reason, to be honest, right? I don't watch anime, and I know there's that stereotype, there's that thought process that almost all digital artists, you would watch anime.
Well,
What's your what's your favorite cartoon growing up as a child?
well, funny enough, I don't start with anime, but I'll get there. My favorite
Okay.
cartoon growing up was Ben 10
Wow.
because
Interesting.
I
That's good.
remember growing up it was while I was growing up we had the evolution of DSTV, which is like the popular satellite network we have in
Yeah.
Nigeria that offers us um, programs from like outside country.
Country. Yes.
So like Ben 10 was always, and there were a lot. Ben 10 had already had a lot of episodes running, so it was more or less always constant on the TV. And for me, it was an action. It was an action animation, action cartoon basically, and I was drawn towards action cartoons. I really love like watching fight scenes or where we have a hero character beating up bad guy, just sort of
Yeah.
storyline. That was what I was always. I'm always moved towards like action animation, and basically, growing up, I always like drew Ben 10. I found myself always drawing Ben 10, even right up to secondary school. I had friends who would come to class. Our notebooks are always filled. Their notebooks are always filled with like Ben 10 characters. And the thing about the Ben 10 universe is there are a lot of characters. Like the creators thought really they had a really broad imagination on the characters that were developed for the cartoon. So there were like a plethora of characters that could be drawn. So we had like a whole full inventory of new things that we could practice our skill with or skill on. So we always found ourselves drawing Ben 10 and Ben 10 characters because almost everybody knew Ben 10 back then. So it was always something. So more or less like a badge to know how to draw one Ben 10
Yeah.
character back then. So yeah, Ben 10 also helped me develop my drawing skills more or less on my creative thinking also. So yeah.
It was great. I actually watched Ben 10 too. I liked it. The storyline was cute. Having a wristwatch that could turn into, I think it was 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 10.
10, yeah, 10 different
aliens.
aliens. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It's good. And the cartoons you've actually watched so far, does it in any way shape into your artistic insight?
Well, yeah, it did actually, even though not surprisingly, because I remember back in my early junior school, I started a comic. I started a comic book. I developed a comic character based on myself.
Yeah.
And if I remember clearly, yeah, I still have like some sheets from the comic book in my library. It was called Ultra Sam. And basically
Wow.
that character had like super sonic hearing and could like produce sonic waves like from his palms. So like Ben 10, having watched Ben, growing up watching Ben 10 and seeing what like people's imagination could create just
Yeah.
made me always question like what could I create if I was like a superhero basically who was beating up that guy. So that was
Yeah.
like the thought process that led to me creating my own comic book and superhero character. So I remember I think I drew about 50 pages. It was
Wow.
one overall daunting task and but then I just knew that I had this story that I wanted to push. I wasn't creating it for no one, but just for myself.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what my guy is capable of doing. So I just day after the other, I had no solid layout of what I was creating. I just knew that once I'm done with the page, I would know what to do on the next page, basically. So I just kept on drawing and drawing. And that's basically how it was for me.
I think I did a comic book as well. But that's one of the things I never finished, to be honest. Yeah, did.
That's cool.
Just never finished it.
You remember what yours was called?
No, I didn't probably give it a name per se. No. One thing I remember doing more was redrawing other comics. But yeah, in like A4, not A4, but buying one of maybe 20 leaves of something and redrawing other comics in it. There was one particular kind of karat comic we had. It was very popular around my area then. Not almost all the kids, but if you were an artist or you loved comics like that, it was one of those books that almost every of those guys had then. So it was quite very popular. So me having those comic book and redrawing them was one thing I really loved. That book was always in black and white, just black and white. But the fun part was we redrew it, then we added colors. So that was quite fun to do at the time. If it wasn't design, Sash, if it wasn't illustration, what was the plan? What did you want that to be when you were little?
Yeah, the answer to that question while I was growing up was an engineer, more specifically, it was between a computer engineer or an electrical engineer. And that would what led to that would be I would always love to fiddle with gadgets growing up. I was always that boy who tried to like fix that radio that was faulty, always like opening stuff around the house, trying to connect one or two wires together. So those were the things that gave me the initial prompt of and when I discovered that there are like career paths, this is a career path, I just knew that this is something I could. This is an answer to the questions people will ask me. So, well, it didn't end up that way, but well, close enough.
Close enough. Do you work as an illustrator like now full time, or you're an independent contractor?
Yes, I wouldn't say full time, but yeah, full time. Yeah, let me just say full time. I work as an illustrator now full time. But it's still more like I'm still like on the path of like discovering the possibilities of like the space. Basically.
And do you only do illustrations, or you also do brand designs and other designs, or you just majorly an illustrator?
No. The thing is, I actually started as I started as a graphic designer, but who specialized like in brand identity and brand design, because I think that was what was much more desired or much. What that was what was sought after back when I started learning how to design. Because if I remember clearly, the particular thing that got me into design was seeing some. Okay, I was taking up. So it was when I was taking up computer engineering like class, not in school, but like it was like a 1 year practice from like a computer engineer. So we had like mates in who we were learning together, and one of them, one break like that, I saw him designing an invitation card, a birthday invitation card. I never knew much about design, software design tools. I only just used to draw back then. So I noticed he was drawing an invitation card, and he told me he was paid for. I asked him if he was doing it for fun or he was getting paid for it, and that was just me fresh out of I think secondary school. Yes, fresh out of secondary school. So he told me he was getting paid for it, and I was blown away because I never knew there was like I could sit down behind the PC and get paid to do something. So I read back home. Lucky thing for me, I had a sibling who had the Adobe sits on a hard drive. So I plugged that hard drive to my PC, spent the entire night on YouTube, the night after that, the night after that, the night after that. So started with like cartooning real life images, then learning how to create like custom shapes from letters and stuff. That's how I found myself in the like graphic design, brand identity space. It's not until more recently I got into illustrations. Yeah. But I did brand identity for a really long time. Brand identity guy with graphic design. So I know pretty much about those two fields.
That's quite fascinating for a digital artist who has a very unique art style. Yeah, it is, because I mean something about art style that I know a little of as an illustrator myself. It's something that can take quite a while to figure out, right, and to form. You actually do have a very unique art style. Like even if I don't see your handle, right, and I see an illustration, there's a particular illustration I would see and my mind would first ring, Sash did that. Even if it's not on your page. So, and relearning that it wasn't really illustration per se that you really started out in, like in the digital space specifically. It's quite fascinating.
Well, the thing what helped me discover my style, because I believe I'm still like in the path of discovery. Yes, it's more or less an.
So if you say you're still on the path of discovery with your art style, and what would you want some other people to say?
I mean, it's just more or less like I don't know if you're familiar with sci-fi or this fictions where like the boss evolves, continually evolves and gains more power as he's evolving, that sort of thing. So yeah, but for me, I saw it as a challenge. And the challenge the question I had in mind then was, I knew what flat illustrations were. I didn't want my work to look like flat illustrations. So how could I approach it from an angle where I'm not like, I'm creating vector illustrations, yes, but how could I make them not look flat? That was the question that was on my mind, because back when I started like getting into illustration, every illustrator or illustration resource I came across were more or less flat, like boring illustrations. So that was the major question that was ringing on my head. So, and the answer I had for it back then was, and the challenge I created for myself was, okay, yes, you would create vector illustrations, but from a different angle. It shouldn't be like the typical everyday angle you see, which is like the side to the side angle to the flat plane
Yeah.
on a straight plane angle. Always like try to take them from a different angle that is not the typical everyday. For example, let's say I have a boy trying to pick up a bucket or you pick up a ball. Typically you'd be inclined towards like viewing it like from a
Yeah.
straight plane. Like, for example, you stand somewhere and looking at the boy trying to pick up a ball. Like what you would see,
Just
basically,
straight.
that's like the
Yeah.
that's like the first imagination you would have of a boy. But then I would always think of it that, okay, let's say there's a camera pointed at the boy from an angle, a top angle. Let's say camera is at a higher level and it's pointing directly at the boy at an
And
at a specific angle. So yeah, that was like the challenge I had, and I always try to like make sure I met up with that. So then that was more or less like what developed the style. I would always like to try to pick up different things, different what would I say? Different everyday
yeah.
practices, um, different everyday characters, and then just push them from angles that are not like the typical
Hmm.
one we're used to.
Have you ever applied for a job as an illustrator and you didn't get it?
Yeah, I have, and it's that's all part of the process basically.
Yeah.
But luckily for me, I have always had I've been fortunate enough to like get the jobs come to me as opposed to like going out to get the jobs. So, but then I have had my own. I've been through a process where the time where I had sent in
Yeah.
applications and got rejected. But then
I
who
mean,
doesn't get
it's
rejected?
it's like
You charge it to
it's
the
like
game.
it's like
And the thing I always take off from that is it just makes me push myself to a level where I
mm,
cannot get rejected. You become so
yeah.
good, you have no choice but to get accepted. And that's how I've been living like my everyday life.
Mm. I want to talk about this. I don't know. You, of course, you probably have heard this question, especially from aspiring illustrators. How do you always know what to draw? Like that very popular question. Like, I don't know what to draw. How do you always? And this is where I like to step in to say, well, why not just draw a spoon, draw a cup, draw shoes, and the likes of that. But then I look at your illustrations as well, and I draw inspiration from them. To be honest, and I want us to talk about the inspiration versus the illustration. Like, how do you get that inspiration? Like you were talking about saying you want to draw a boy who wants to pick up a ball, a bucket, and you position. But how do you get inspiration for your illustrations? Look at the Hilda Bassi illustration you did. I think quite a number of other artists did illustrations also for celebrating Hilda Bassi, and that's just one amongst many. Look at the illustration project system you did for Dunlop slippers, right? The white and black flip flop slippers. Look at the Crocs illustration you also did, and this is just to name a few, right? How do you get the inspiration for the illustration?
Okay. Well, for me, the the one thing I would always say is, well, it's a mashup of some things which I would mention. But one thing I would always like people to keep in mind is, or to always note, is to have an open mind. Like, don't restrict your mind, your thinking, regardless of everyone. Like, well, face value, everyone thinks stupid things sometimes, stupid, weird
Yeah.
things. But me, I don't trash the weird things I'm thinking about. I always like collate them or compile them in separate segments in my head and regardless of how weird it is, it could be refurbished or made better to look appealing and presentable.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, having an open mind is one thing. Having knowledge. I wouldn't say enough knowledge, but having vast knowledge about a lot of things. And that's in the case of for the Crocs illustration.
Yeah.
I'll describe how it is a mashup of those two things I just mentioned.
Okay.
And which is funny enough, I got the I got the idea for that illustration around 2 a.m. I was on my bed just right as I was about to sleep. And why was that? That I think around during the period there was a meme going around of he thinks he's him or they think they are them or something like that. If I remember. Like, and that meme was just basically to like shade people who are trying to like fit in into a certain category of some sort. So then it just crossed my mind that Crocs is like an imitation of the real life crocodiles, but they are made for the fit.
Wow.
So what do you have when like have a product trying to imitate what is it like in the animal kingdom when they notice like a product is trying to imitate them basically? So I just immediately I put that on. And one thing I always like I always write down your ideas, like regardless of how stupid they are, crazy stupid, they are good stupid, they are bad stupid. But then regardless of how this might sound, always write them down, because if I had slept over it, I was definitely forgetting it. I would remember I had such a thought. So I immediately around that time I wrote it down into my notes app or whatever. But my notes app is really what gets my ideas first. So then when I woke up, I started to develop how I could create that illustration. So yeah, it's having an open mind, like the mind thing, and the mind is really powerful. The mind is vast.
Yeah.
A lot of things could be created. So I always try to look beyond the typical everyday. So that's why most of my work are not like typical what we see, because I always like try to go beyond what I see or what I know, using the help of what I know, basically. So, and also there's no harm in like following trends, but then when you follow trends, always come at it from a you angle, a you direction. Yes, you are trying to do what someone else is doing. Well, how can you do it that is unique to, or it has your own flavor, has your own signature, basically. Yeah. So it's really a mashup of having an open mind, being knowledgeable about your surroundings, basically. And also, one more thing, which is my environment. My environment has inspired a lot of my artistic expression and illustrations. So and thing about Africa is there's a lot of inspiration around.
Yeah.
If you really look into what you have going on around you, regardless of whether they being tattered brown roofs, regardless, dusty roads, there are illustrations, there are inspirations everywhere. So really a mashup of your environment, your knowledge, and just having an open mind overall. So you mash all those up into like a blender and then
that's unique.
Bring out the juice.
That's very unique. I'm actually remembering one of the illustration you did on I think it was one of these shuttle bus from Ibadan, and maybe not that one. I can't remember exactly, but then there's another one about orange. There were lots of oranges in the basket. I don't know if you can remember the illustration I'm talking about. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can actually see these principles you're talking about and how you apply them to those illustrations. Quite unique. What would you say is your least favorite thing about being an illustrator?
That used to be drainant.
Wow, drainers.
But then I not anymore. I've seen I now like now I've now been moved to like drainers because I would like try to take the disadvantages or the least desired things and make the best out of them. So I I now like drainers, but then I would be more or less inclined to say creative blocks, having creative blocks, but then I don't I don't consider that as a disadvantage. So I don't really have a disadvantage. And the reason why I say I don't consider having a creative block as like a
Disadvantage or least favorite thing.
mm-hmm. I see having a creative block as like I would call it like a mind rejuvenation. I see it as part of the process.
Yeah, yeah. There is a particular question I love to ask illustrators whenever I get the opportunity to, and I get the privilege of having them on the podcast. Do you think illustrators have high chance hiring opportunity specifically within our demographic, the Nigerian African demographic? This is more like a summary to that question. Do you think being an illustrator is enough, specifically in Nigeria?
Okay, there's one thing about, if you realize, there's a trend of artists being commissioned to create album covers and stuff. I think back then, a lot of people didn't, a lot of digital, they were just, I don't think there were a lot going on. A lot of artists in like the musical space, and well, in Nigeria, a lot of people just usually took pictures, and that was like the creative, you deploy a creative guy. Yeah, it's still being employed too, by this time. But then a lot of artists are now being sought after in the musical industry to like create illustrations for the covers. And that's because like illustrations offer a wide array of exploration. You could create worlds, unique worlds with your illustration or your art basically. And a lot of artists are beginning to say that their art and visual arts could go in hand in hand in that regards. So, and a lot of artists are now being looked into. A lot of artists are creating mascots, and that if you look at Victoria, is trying to create an image. A lot of illustrations are always Rema too employed a lot of illustrations in most of his work. But then it also boils down to like creating a space for you, basically. Making yourself like desirable is a ton of challenge. It's not a walk in the park, to be honest. But then I don't know, for example, now see Shutterbug. His style is like pretty much unique. You could tell from right in your sleep. And that's just like creating a path for yourself in what you're doing. Just try to be different. And well, at the end of the day, the honest thing is it really wouldn't work for everybody. But as long as one tries to like be different and create a mark for themselves in wherever they do, I believe they would succeed in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much for actually taking your time to touch more on this subject. And the reason I love asking this particular question specifically to illustrators is because I have quite a number of illustrators, aspiring illustrators, who are also, learning the basics of illustrations and the likes of that. And somehow it looks like illustrators are like on the list, on the very, very bottom of the food chain, not necessarily food chain, but on the hierarchy when it comes to design and hiring, and like it's like the very last option. So I always want illustrators to express themselves and share advice in this light, touch this particular subject, so these aspiring illustrators can know that in as much as being an illustrator is enough, even within the Nigerian ecosystem, there are other intricacies, there are other things that can be learned, just like what you've mentioned. Visual arts in general, it's not just within just drawing vector shapes or raster base in that light. There's a whole lot of advancement you can put it to make yourself desirable. And so thank you, Sash, for that answer. I really appreciate.
One thing I would always also like to mention rather is the space is just pretty much evolving right in Nigeria. Even in the world pretty much, but then right in Nigeria it's more or less a space that's just budding up. So it's really difficult to like crack the code of. But then that's why I say like making yourself desirable is creating attention for yourself, making your work significant, and communicating the right ideas would help like put the person out there. So Nigeria is still Nigeria is still yet to accept a lot of things. So everyone is just trying to maneuver around the space. And also, regardless of that, I would always also advise illustrators to not limit themselves to just like Nigeria. They should always like aim to be at like to the world in general, like on a global scale. Always think beyond. You could be inspired by your locality, but think beyond your locality. Yeah, that's like the space shuttle that takes you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's true. That's brilliant. What are some challenges that you've experienced as an illustrator, and how did you overcome them?
Well, one of the major challenges that I experienced is, I would say, what's it called? Clients reviews, like appealing to, because it's one thing to drop something, and I've spent days fleshing out something, but if the idea just doesn't work, you would have to go back there a whole bunch of time. But now there's a safe net for that problem. There's a safety net for that problem rather, and which is charging for revisions and stuff. That was like an early challenge I had, like starting. But once that is incorporated into your agreements, your whatever agreements I have, that's always like incorporated into the agreement. This is the number of revisions and look-throughs that this could have. I think everybody would be everyone is happy with whoever at the end of the day. And if you're not happy, you have to be happy by force, or you just quit.
Yeah, you have to be happy.
Or you just quit.
Yeah, true. I've also had challenges with client revisions, and sometimes when I hear that this is good for a start, especially after sending in sketches, sometimes it can be very stressful. Yeah.
Well, as much as I appreciate, I always appreciate every opportunity I get to like collaborate or work with clients, people. I would always prefer to draw for me. I always prefer to do my own thing. So, but then it's just more or less a challenge to create from this perspective of someone else, or trying to infuse your ideas, your mind with someone else's mind and create something. But then I always appreciate every opportunity I get to create for me.
Same here.
And that makes me love the entire. That's where I developed the love for being an illustrator.
Yeah, same here.
Creating for my own self.
Yeah, same here. Now, as an illustrator, I think this would be one of the many very difficult questions for illustrators to answer, but I'm still going to ask you. Amongst all the works you've done, which is your favorite piece?
It's a tie between. It has to be a tie between Baba Blue and the Crux illustration.
The Crux illustration.
Yes. And okay, there's also one which is more or less two more rather.
Two more.
One is there's a WhatsApp illustration I made, which was hang on, don't hang up. Basically, that was like the copy I used for the illustration. Hang on, don't hang up. It's like show someone holding on to the WhatsApp logo and stuff. And the other would be covered by the blood. And that was because I often use myself as references in a lot of my illustration. But then it was my own picture I took where I was like folded up on the floor as a reference to create that illustration. And it was more or less like a challenge. That particular illustration was a challenge to myself, for myself to see how I could implement using my own self as references. Because probably before then I was always using references from the internet and stuff. But yeah.
That's great. In as much as it would be very hard for me to pick a sphere, I really, really, really love your Baba Blue illustrations. Like, I love it. The color, the choice, the look, the feel. It's just very inviting and very welcoming. I love it. Closing thoughts, Sash. Closing thoughts.
Okay.
No questions, nothing. Just give us. Give us something. Drop an advice. Anything.
Well, what I would say is, like I've said before, don't always see every day. And this is more or less an advice for myself. See every day as a challenge to go plus ultra, to go beyond average, to go beyond, to always be the best version of yourself, and keep your mind open. Try to think the extraordinary. Don't settle for less. Try to go beyond the typical everyday things you do, the typical everyday things you see, and always be on because every learning. So everyone learns every day. I'm learning every day. I'm always trying to become a better version of who I was yesterday. So always try to go for being the best, regardless of if they say there's Obasanjo, there's Aliko Dangote in the room, that sort of thing. There's Tony, there's what's his name? Femi Otedola in the room. Always try to see yourself as being on that same level or beyond them even, because there's really no stopping to the human potential. And that applies to illustrations too. Always try to create better than yourself.
That's beautiful, Sash. That's beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. This has really been
Thank you for having me.
Insightful as well for me. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode on the Designstration podcast with Ufot Ubon. If you enjoyed this episode, kindly leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. You can also suggest a topic or ask a question by filling out the form in the description below. We also appreciate when you share this podcast with friends and other creatives, even as you make plans to join us again next time, as we bring you more insightful conversations like this. Design plus illustration equals Designstration.